regional conference agreement. So we'll send you the final version.
Awesome. I heard the last minute back and forth. But
oh, got it. Okay, yeah.
It is now done, at least.
Yes, exactly. That's a nice accomplishment.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Colleen, for pressing record. I think this is all who we might get today. So let's just move forward, and then we can do some email conversations if there are any other follow-up questions. So this morning, I sent over a note to, if I know you have a party planner or your chief of staff or director of operations, your awards coordinators, the RDs, and the RD elects. And the document that I sent over is kind of an overview of the NASPA annual conference. We've gotten this request from the regional directors the past 4 or 5 years that it's helpful to have all the annual conference things in one place. So that is what this document is doing.
Thank you.
So that is all there. I think we will send your party planners / coordinators of meetings. They just need to submit the meeting requests by November 1st. And we noted the important regional meetings below for y'all to put in. So again, that's the advisory board meeting from 1 to 3, the business meeting from 5:15 to 6:30, and the regional receptions. That's Monday 9 to 11. So those are the 3 meetings that they need to put in. If there are other meetings that are not going to go into your suite. So I know that, for example, Shannon TLC, if you're listening, Region 4 West usually does a new board member orientation from 12:15 to 1 in a space. That usually is there. If any of your conference committees are interested in doing a joint meeting that will not go in your suite again, they would submit through that information. So that really is just getting all of those meeting requests. And again, November 1st is the deadline for those. We've updated the way that we're tracking awards information. So Colleen should have the form ready, and we'll be sending your awards coordinators a note next week. And that's the awards information. Again, both for documenting who won your regional award for this this fiscal year, as well as documenting who should be the individuals that forward up to the national process to be considered by the full board of directors for the national NASPA awards. And we'll follow up with them with information regarding that. There is information regarding retirees. So Terry, I know this would be new for, and Chris, this is new for y'all. We do acknowledge anyone that's retired between annual conference to annual conference. The first set we acknowledge in the program book. The second set we acknowledge, apologies. All of them we acknowledge at the the NASPA business meeting through scrolling, and it's put in as a resolution. It goes to the Bowling Green archives, etc. So we need those names no later than the last date is March 13th, and that's getting us that information. And then
Nathan, can I ask a question about that?
Of course, Kenny.
On the retirees, are we mainly focused on people that have been active in leadership, or people at the vice presidential level? Or because I've had campuses like send me everybody who's retiring from the division, and I don't. That's not really what we're trying to do, is it?
Sure. So I'll punt. I'll give my answer, but Amy, I might punt to you from your perspective. So I think historically it has just been vice presidents, and I think it's more out of just acknowledging the VPs.
Right.
There's something for me about acknowledging retirees of NASPA,
right?
At least. So even if they've been the executive assistant for the vice president of student affairs, but they've been a NASPA member that entire time, there's something about that sort of person I would want to acknowledge.
Right.
But I don't know, like, other thoughts on kind of what the litmus test for who to acknowledge, who not to.
I think involvement in NASPA is key. I mean, because you could have an admin assistant in an office or something that's worked in the student affairs office for 25 years. If they've been active in NASPA, I think so, but I think that's the key. They have to be a consistent member of NASPA. Wouldn't you say?
Right.
I would agree.
Okay, so focused on senior student affairs officers and or people who've been very active in NASPA.
Yeah, and I think the or is fine also, Candy, because
Okay.
I look at, I think so if they've tapped out because of choices at the chief
Right.
housing officer level, but they've
Right.
been an active NASPA member, I think we would want to acknowledge that.
Right. Okay. Got it.
If they are an ACPA person only, we wouldn't want to.
Oh, Chris. But I will clarify that qualifications as well as that process in a follow-up email. We're just figuring
Okay.
out how we can capture those individuals. But
Got it.
thank you for the question. And then the third thing that I will clarify with Lauren and then figure out how to submit is are the meetings in your suites. Again, as a reminder, this is really just so we can work with the hotels to make sure refreshes of the suite, all of those sorts of things don't happen during those times. So that's why we request those. And we are still finalizing location and suite. But I do know that that is very helpful for y'all's planning purposes. Stephanie Gordon and Lawrence said we probably should have it by the end of the month. But once I get more information on the suite, we will go from there. As a reminder, we won't know the room for your suite, but we will know the type of suite. Again, we'll clarify the size of the fridge. Is there any microwave? All of those sorts of things for hosting capabilities. And when Helen, Grace, and Regina are on the call, since they're in Region 3, we can bring up the ordering process. Candy, the process of the delivery and kind of just the regional director finding the location, did that work out well last year?
I think so. I didn't hear any negative feedback. I don't know, for those of you that, what I did provide was 4 or 5 local businesses that were willing to deliver. And then I think people kind of met up people in the hotel parking lot or even made arrangements to meet them out front. So I don't know for all you others who had to do that, or I guess you guys didn't have, Chris, you didn't have to do that because Scott was still doing.
No, I was with Scott.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I think the mobile grocery delivery stuff kind of changes the game. I mean,
Yeah.
That's just the easiest way, because what me and Scott did is we got on to Ralph's website, made the order, and then went downstairs and waited for the delivery person. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we did too, even for ours. So I think, Terry, did you have any involvement in that?
No, but I know that Jody had a sister that was living nearby, so she had pre-shipped everything that she ordered from Amazon to her sister's house, and then just loaded up her car, and then we met her downstairs, and we had a group of folks that helped.
Okay. Stuff out. Yeah, and Nathan, I didn't hear of anybody who got pushback from the hotel or anything, so I think we're okay to do it that way.
Perfect. So we can just.
Literally what we're talking about was like 2 or 3. I think we had like 2 or 3 bags of paperback fish. So it's like we're just eating cheap for the week.
Right. Yeah. I think what would be helpful is if the RD in the region, wherever the annual conference is, could just send us some resource, phone numbers and websites.
Great. So we will make note of that for a future RD meeting. One of the things that we've done some years, we haven't done other years, but just consistently is we are providing you the opportunity to do your shipment with the NASPA shipment. So what that means is we would receive it here in the NASPA office, we would then get it, and we would either deliver it to the JW staff office, the Hilton staff office, or the convention center staff office. And then it would be up to you to work with Danny and I to figure out a time that you could go get the stuff and then bring it into your suite or wherever it's used. So that is one option. That deadline is a lot earlier. You'll see that it's February 14th. And that's just because of us packing it up, making sure it all gets there, etc.
Yeah.
You can also feel free to ship it directly to your hotel room, or if you know someone local in the area. So I think those are those options. But we did want to allow for that again this year if you wanted to send it through us in the office.
Yeah. And if I just might add my 2 cents, since we're paying for it anyway, and this is more for the new RDs, it might be easier just to ship it to your hotel, because then you don't have to add the step of involving Nathan or Danny and tracking it down and all of that. And there's no difference in cost. So it might be like I just ship stuff to me at my hotel, and then I have somebody on the staff bring it up in a cart if I need it in my room.
So we will, again, we're finalizing locations, but we will finalize where your suite is, where your business meeting is, where your advisory board meeting is, and where your reception is. So we still need you and your team to put those into the system, but Lauren has already pre-held space for that. Danny worked with Lauren to ensure the room sizes are appropriate for the average number of members that you have in attendance. And we did figure out the timing piece. So hopefully the issues that we had back in LA will not occur again. Danny and Lauren's been good about both the reception as well as the advisory board, as well as the open business meeting on Monday. We confirmed those spaces.
And regarding food and beverage for the receptions, do we just work directly with the hotel, or do you guys want to give us a contact person, or?
Yep, so we'll give a contact person once it's in, Candy, and then one of the pieces, it's gone both ways or multiple ways over the years. I know some regions, usually it's been helpful for the regional directors just to share among the 7 of y'all, so that, one group's not ordering caviar and champagne and the other one's ordering cheese and crackers. But I will leave it up to y'all if you want to coordinate that. Again, if you want to order them on your own, Danny and I can then compile them though and share it with the group. So we wouldn't do that. Let me work with Lauren, Candy, to figure out what's the easiest way. Because the other option is, and again, we can work with y'all. If you give us a budget, we can work to give here's what your budget could buy, and then you can adjust from there.
Yeah.
Really, whatever y'all would prefer, we can help accommodate that.
Right. And then you can also confirm for us, maybe on the next call, that there are going to be bar setups in the hallways.
Yep. Yes. Thanks. So I'll be able, once we get the rooms, I'll be able to work with Lauren to figure out where the bar locations are.
Great. Thank you.
Of course. Let's see. I shared this on the previous call. It's not in the sheet, but we will be adding it once we get the rooms. As a reminder, we are doing in-person trainings on Sunday morning. Sunday from 10 to 12. 10 to 11 will be general involvement and interest of any NASPA volunteer that wants to hear just best practices on volunteer management, kind of what we work. From 11 to 12, we'll then split into 4 different groups. There'll be a group talking about awards. There'll be a group talking about volunteering and volunteer management. There'll be a group talking about events and event management. And then the membership coordinators will come together as well. Again, Sunday from 10 to 12. Once we get that room finalized, we'll send it out to all your respective people. But in particular, for the elects on the call, if you've identified people or think people that might be good, I would encourage you to invite them to that meeting, again, Sunday from 10 to 12.
Yes. And so when you get that finalized in an email, you'll be sending that to the elects as well, right?
Yes, that's correct, Candy.
Okay, great.
Any other annual conference questions? A couple schedule changes that I believe have been shared with the board, or will be shortly. As a reminder, we have shifted the awards luncheon to the NASPA and NASPA Foundation Awards Celebration. It will no longer be over Tuesday lunch. It will be immediately after your advisory board meetings, or excuse me, your open business meetings. So it'll be Monday from 6:30 to 8:30. Your advisory board meetings go 5:15 to 6:30. The event will go 6:30 to 8:30 with about 30 minutes of receptioning in the very beginning, with programs starting around 6:50 or 7. So there'll definitely be enough time for your advisory board meetings to end and then come over. It is open to everyone. We are trying to create a feeling that everyone will be invited. A team of us are finalizing what that looks like, and we'll be bringing the final kind of, this is what we think, we'll share with the Sections and Awards Committee at the December board meeting in DC. And then the business meeting will be going over a couple educational time blocks. So it'll be on Tuesday from 3 to 4:30. So that is a little bit different. We used to just do the business meeting as a standalone event. Well, standalone not against ed sessions at least, but it will be going over 2 different ed session time blocks. The featured speakers, so the large keynotes, will be in the afternoon to accommodate the Connected Conference attendees as well. So it'll be Monday and Tuesday from 1:30 to 2:30. They used to be Monday and Tuesday morning. And then we are still finalizing with the knowledge communities, but we are proposing the communities fair, which used to be 7 to 9 p.m. on Monday, to actually go over lunch on Tuesday. So it would be 12:15 to 1:15 on Tuesday. And because of that, we're separating it from the grad prep fair. So we will actually have some additional space. That being said, if the regions would like a table, it's gone back and forth looking over the years. Some regions have wanted to have a table. One year we just did a regions table, and each region, conference committee could just drop off stuff. I would encourage, if your region does want a table, that it is staffed, so there is someone behind the space. There are no ed sessions over that time period though. So again, Tuesday 12:15 to 1:15, and Danny and I will follow up probably next month on, do you want a table, do you not want a table, and the timeline for when we need to hear back. Again, defer to y'all if just one region table. I probably would recommend either one joint region table or seven separate tables. I think it might look weird if only 3 of the 7 regions were represented.
So you'll just do like a little vote with us later on?
Yep. Well,
Okay.
I need to finalize how it gets selected, Candy, and then we'll bring it up probably on our November meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I would imagine most of our membership folks would probably be natural fits for setting those tables, right?
Yeah, or anybody. And I mean, I'm in a weird situation because half my people aren't going to be there. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask for anybody who can work the table to work the table. But I like the idea of us having individual tables.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's easy for our boards to staff up.
Yeah.
We have enough people on our boards.
And it's about people wanting to get involved,
I
really.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I go back?
Oh yeah.
Sorry. Just to clarify, after the business meeting is a reception-y kind of event, and it used to be the awards, the other awards. Why am I blanking on it? I have this award, very special people award, the Pillars Award program. So is that combined with the other awards now?
Yeah. So the way the Monday evening event is combined with the NASPA Foundation. So yes, it is combined with the Pillars right now.
Okay.
So that's 6:30 to 8:30. On the Tuesday flow, it will be from 3. Timing might be a little bit off, but I believe it's 3 to 4:30 will be the business meeting. That's the NASPA annual business meeting, and as board members, you're expected to be there. From 4:45 to 5:45 is the VPSA reception. From 5:45 to 6:45 is the volunteer leaders reception. And then that overlaps with, from 6 to 7 is the foundation donor level reception.
Okay, got it. No, but my question is, so the new thing is that we're combining the awards that we used to give at the awards lunch with the Pillars Awards.
Correct. The other, what we're trying to do, Candy, as well, is really not just acknowledge those 2 awards, but all award winners. So,
okay, got it.
In an ideal world, NASPA would also be acknowledging all the KC award winners, all of the grant winners, all of the regional award winners. So we're really trying to make it a celebration of NASPA awards. But those awards that get acknowledged at other places, at the KC business meetings, at your regional conferences, will probably acknowledge in a different way than NASPA Pillars and NASPA annual award winners. And
the big awards. Yeah.
And we're talking about tiering even those awards now moving forward.
I think it's a great idea, man. I'm just thinking of reception fatigue. Folks who want to be present and all that stuff. It's exhausting.
Although I will be really curious what kind of pushback you get from our elders in terms of, I think there are some people who are going to feel like you're making it less special for Pillars and for what I've heard called the Legacy Awards.
I have the fun cultural shift job of working with the team to figure out what makes sense, and I'm getting Amy and Stephanie's buy-in first, and then Denzel and Jason's, and then the board. So
Yeah.
definitely, Candy. I think I think when the small meeting that we had, I think the piece, at least for us, that's driving a lot of this thought is
Right.
the NASPA of old.
Yeah.
And so I don't say this in a negative way, but NASPA awards, I think, used to be like the awards luncheon. Very great for those 450 that were able to attend, or those people
Right.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel like NASPA as an organization, though, is moving more towards the enough reception for those people. And that's still warm and endearing and a lot, but it's a little more lively, and it's a little more so that balance absolutely is something we're keeping in mind. So
well, a little less expensive for a smaller number of people. So, but we're having some of the same pushback with things that we're trying to do with our awards luncheon.
Yep.
Just you. I think you will always run into but we've always done it this way. Why are we changing it? Sort of a reaction. So good luck, Nathan.
Danita, the tabling for the communities fair, is 4 East, would y'all be open to a table by yourself?
Yes, we would.
Okay, so 4 out of the 3 RDs voted, so we will be moving forward with
Woohoo!
All right, and Shanna, did you join? Are you the 816?
Yep, that's me.
Okay, so hopefully you are also on board, Shanna, with a table.
I was raising my hand and nodding my head.
Awesome. So I will confirm kind of that space and what that looks like. Great. Any other annual conference questions or things related to the NASPA annual conference? You should be receiving in the next week or two, if you haven't already. Amy Prieto, I think, is working on the board logistics for the annual conference as well. So that should be coming out shortly regarding again, as a reminder, we do your hotel reservation. You are responsible for doing the registration.
Hey, Nathan.
This is Terry. I have a question. Can you hear me, Nathan?
Yeah, Terry.
Okay. I have a question about the regional suite, and I know that, I'm curious about who's responsible for payment for what. I know in the past there was a suite with an adjoining room, and either the secretary or chief of staff, at least in Region 2, was in that adjoining room. And I wondered how that worked. Is that just a Region 2 thing, and who covers the cost of that?
I will defer to your other colleagues, Terry, because I don't know how that's. So the adjoining suite or the adjoining room to your suite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the differences between, at least for us, this is Candy, between the regional and the national is at the annual conference, the suite part of the room, the living room, NASPA takes care of, but you have a bedroom attached to that suite, and other than the days that you're there for the meetings, for the board meetings, NASPA will take care of that. I think that's usually the first 2 days. But after that, once the conference starts, you're responsible for that. So that was a surprise for me. So at my regional, my bedroom is taken care of by the conference. But at the annual conference, you're responsible for your bedroom once the conference starts. The adjoining room, Amy will ask you, I think she already has asked us actually, if we want to use the adjoining room, and if so, who would be in there, but that person would be responsible for that sleeping room.
Do any of the regions pay for the regional director's hotel when it's not on Central NASPA time? I'm guessing no.
Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
Yeah. It's always been your individual institutional costs. I guess the notion's always been you're going to go anyway, right? I think.
Yeah,
Right.
Chris, I think for the conference committee, that's similar. So we do cover, for the conference leadership committee, we'll cover the hotel rooms for the nights when they normally wouldn't come in for the conference. but the assumption is you would be coming to the conference anyway, which is why those nights you'll be responsible.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I believe though, Terry, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no rules that if two wanted to put your chief of staff in the adjoining room to pay for some of those costs from the regional budget, because the duties are part of that position.
I mean, that's your discretion as a region.
Okay.
Our chief of staff usually stays in the connecting, or has stayed in the connecting, and I know Bernard will stay in the connecting room this year too.
But the region doesn't support that room cost.
But Danita did, right. Danita, does the region cover that cost or no?
The region will cover that cost.
Will, okay.
Yeah, we have voted in our region to cover that cost. That's connected to the regional suite. We have voted to cover that.
Yeah. And Danita, do they pay for your room too?
We have voted to cover that too.
Okay, great.
It's only like 3 days, I think.
Uh-huh.
Is that right? 2 or 3 days.
Like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday,
Yes.
the days of the conference. Yeah.
Right, correct.
Yeah. And in Region 6, we have not historically paid for those rooms. And I have had the operations person stay in the adjoining room, although pray for me because my person can't come this year, so I have to find somebody else.
I was wondering that when I sent the email this morning, Candy.
Yeah, Juliana's at a Cal State, so I'm looking for a volunteer who wants to stay up until 3 a.m. and handle drunk people.
Any other annual conference questions? Great. So the other part of today's conversation that we wanted to start was the continuation from one of the deliverables from the July board meeting. So in the email that I sent last night, I reattached the minutes and the notes from the RD board meeting, and we are working towards the other elements that we talked about. So the regional chart of accounts, if you will, or documenting the trainings, etc. But today's call, we wanted to start the conversation regarding what we called in that document the chargebacks. What I ended up doing is looking at kind of through the conversations I've had with y'all as regional directors, sitting in your advisory board calls and looking at just past documents and past conversations that the regional task force has had over the past 7 years, tried to document in some sort of way kind of what are the expenses that are just part of doing the region. You will notice that the expenses related to your conferences are, for the most part, are not there. This is really the day-to-day operations of the region. What are those expenses? And I put them kind of in 3 different buckets, though there might be 4 different buckets, though there might be others that we would see: conferences and events, NASPA annual conference, general administration, and then that kind of future. And then split them into 2 different columns. For that specific item, is there a regional responsibility for costs? Or is it a central office responsibility for those costs? Or is there a relationship? Is it subsidized in some sort of way? Is there another element? And the goal would be that after today's call, and obviously after sending the recording and hearing feedback from our colleagues, that we have a better sense, does this capture all of the general expenses for the region? They kind of all existed in a variety of places. And again, a lot of the conversations we've been having over the past few months is just documenting. So then when our colleagues 5 years from now have these questions again, we can go back to these sorts of documents and look to see what's currently going on. Amy, any other framing thoughts or anything else that you'd want to add?
No, I think you framed it well.
Okay, great. So I will pop it in. Let me just find it again. Hopefully we have a new team drive, and I think I shared it correctly, but hopefully you did get access to it. when I send it, and I'll put it in the chat box as well. I think as Amy and I chatted, we didn't necessarily have a thought of the best way to move forward in how to talk about the document. I can just go through each line, and then if there are questions or concerns or something that we add, maybe that's the best bet, and then leave reactions for the end. Okay, great. So I can go through. Danny, do you mind taking notes on the different items as people go through? Awesome, thank you. And let me just reopen it. So the first kind of area that I thought about and looking is charges related to the conferences and events, so the administration of meetings for the conference. Again, this does not cover like postcards or those sorts of things that are directly tied to the conference, but kind of the general administration. So credit card charges. So that is something that comes in through our database, but we charge it back to the event, just like any of other NASPA events. So that's where the credit card charges would go. You'll see that website registration hosting are located there. And really what the document's trying to do is if a group, so in this case the region, were to run an event independent of any other organization. So let's say, Danita Fort East said, hey, Peace NASPA, we're gonna create our own 501c3. What would additional cost for running an event be? So that's why website hosting, registration hosting are located there. Liability insurance as well. So the liability insurance, y'all are covered under the general NASPA policy. But if there are specific additional events that have increased liability, aka a fun run, there is an additional cost, and there's a process for that. So that's what the liability insurance is. The mobile app, so similar to Guidebook Socio as a mobile app, NASPA has a larger contract for Socio, and then the regions buy specific types of apps within there, and it's dependent upon the number of downloads, the price changes. I know there's been questions about this, and this was actually discussed in the previous RGTF task force, was about executive travel. And the regional directors at that time decided that an executive team member, so again, that's the board chair, chair-elect, past board chair, or Kevin. Ideally, Kevin and the current board chair, but depending on schedules, it has differed. The region would cover the hotel and registration. Really, it's just comping the registration, but if there are any additional costs or budgeting for that. The central office will cover travel, so whether they're flying or miles, ground transportation, and then meals not covered by the conference. So again, that's what the executive travel is referring to. Staff travel, so again, the regions will have agreed to cover hotel, flight, ground transportation, meals not covered by the conference for one staff member. And again, that's traditionally Danny or I, or if 3 regional meetings are covering all each other, one of our other team members. And then we experimented this year at Region 2-3 of sending an additional staff member to help with registration. And that was Tanya, who many of you know. And Fort East, for example, is bringing Terry Lynn Hines, our Senior Director of Public Policy, to do an educational session. That would be on the NASPA staff side. Ribbons, so again, at some conferences and some points, the regions have been you used to pay us the subsidized rate and all of these sorts of things, and it just got too complicated. So ribbons are now individually purchased by the region. The one exception to ribbons, or it's still paid by the region, but the one exception that are required are the Indigenous Peoples Knowledge Community, the land acknowledgement stickers. So for those of you that you might remember in LA, the IPKC worked with Central Office to create 2 land acknowledgement stickers and as part of the IPPP. And those costs would be charged back to the region, similar to any other event for the organization. Questions?
Can you put that in here?
We can call that out more explicitly, Candy. That it was kind of implied in the ribbons, but we can call because it is separate, we can call out IPPP ribbon, land acknowledgement ribbon separately as well. Yeah.
Right. Just so that because this will be used in perpetuity. This is just a great document that shows things that need to be done also. And so that'll be a good reminder. Quick question about the ribbons purchases. Does it matter to the central office if how those are purchased? Like, should we just go off, strike off on our own and find a vendor and get them, or should we use
Not-
your vendor, or?
Yeah, not really, Candy. I mean, I think, maybe that's a question for from our perspective, not really.
Okay.
I will say ribbons, when purchased, like most things, when you buy in bulk, they get cheaper.
Right.
So, I think there's a larger question. The reason we stopped doing it is from an administrative hassle. It was just to, like, we're going to charge $39.76 and then plus shipping, but but I think part of the end goal of this conversation is, are there some charges? I know it's not in this document, but we can actually, Danny, can you add it to the bottom, of projectors? We've had conversations of, do we buy projectors? Does Central buy them and then ship them out? But then there's a cost for shipping and storage.
Exactly.
So I think that our end goal, and I think since we've been talking in June or July at the board meeting, is that this document could document what currently is the process, but then we can have some future forward conversations around, because I think we established in July, the regions do not want to create a central repository with the reserves for individualized regional kind of what ifs. It's clear that each regional director thought that their regional advisory boards wanted to keep that central. I would say, though, if the RD, when we chatted in July, it sounded like we were open, though, if there were joint costs across all 7 regions in the future, potentially using reserves for that. The storage and shipping and purchasing of projectors, for me, would qualify in there. And so I think those are the sorts of conversations ideally we could start having in December.
Yeah, let's put that on the list. I actually would like to put, as silly as it might seem, but I'd like us to talk about ribbons in December too, just about using them. From a sustainability perspective, and I know we love our long thing of ribbons, but is there a different way to do that? I don't know. Now I'm really poking at the bears.
It's a good question, Candy. Think about the organizational culture shift that would be necessary to achieve it. But as we look to be more sustainable, I love the conversation.
Yeah.
Sustainable and inclusive too. It's like,
exactly.
I'm always like, oh, do I have enough ribbons on my badge?
Right. Talk about making people feel badly. Well, I'm projecting like 50 years into the future, and I'm thinking about, I have some ability to hold up my hand and virtually my list of accomplishments, pops up in front of you on a weird virtual screen, a la that movie with Tom Cruise. I don't know, but do we really need to keep attaching these little bits of what is in essence plastic to our badges?
No, great,
just a question.
No,
good point. The information could just easily be printed on a name badge if you have real estate on it.
Or we just do sustainable pins. There's definitely potential other costs, but in the grand scheme of things, I will. Oh, excuse me. I'm a ribbon fan, but from a sustainability perspective, Candy, that's definitely a very valid point. I think and maybe we're feeding into the generation, but I know that there's definitely a lot of interest and want from some of our younger members.
Right.
More so just from finding visible community with potentially invisible identities.
Right. Yeah. And that's a very good point. So.
Yeah, but definitely we can add it to December. Other conference and events costs that we're not listing. The one framing part I did forget, apologies, is once we finalize this list, Amy and I and Danny will go back and input as much as we can actual dollar amounts or more specificity into these areas, again, just to give a holistic view of the full conversation.
Or at least a formula by which a dollar amount is calculated.
Right.
It's going to be based on the revenue, of course. So things like that.
Yeah. I have a question. The staff attendance at meetings, right now, let me say what I think the process is. So for our advisory board, let's say retreats or the big meetings, we are asking a NASPA staff person if they would like to come, and then the regions are paying for that. But I think that's connected mainly to advisory board as opposed to conference committee. Is that correct? Or is that also happening with, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for calling that out, because as you were speaking, I was like, oh, we're combining it. Danny, make note, there's two different charges, because there's conferences and events, and there's the site visit. So many of y'all have summer meetings where your conference committee will go out and do a planning meeting. Some of the regions have chosen to have staff come out and assist during that summer site visit meeting. So that summer site visit meeting is also usually tied to your summer advisory board meeting. And that's not really accounted for here. Staff travel, so line 9 was more so talking about the
going to the conference.
At the conference and the event, the specific one at the event. But there also is the site visit that some regions are paying for staff connected to conference and event. And as you noted, Candy, there's also the summer advisory board meeting.
Right.
Or the advisory board meetings maybe in general.
Right.
And again, some regions are, some aren't.
So what we might do with line 9 is write staff travel at conference, and then we could have another line that is staff travel at site visit meeting, and then somewhere else on this chart needs to be staff travel at advisory board meetings.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, we'll go ahead and make those edits.
Okay.
Any other reactions, edits, thoughts to the conferences and events or things that we missed?
Yeah, I have a question, comment. I'm not exactly sure. So I think some of this conversation for our region came up when our treasurer was going through budget, and there had been money, I think, taken from the account for ribbons for the national conference. And so I think there's a couple of different pieces here. And I'm not sure, I feel like I'm being a little bit petty because I really don't remember or know how much the ribbons cost, and if we're going to have future conversations, maybe this isn't even worth it, but just throwing it out there. As far as like ribbons for regions at the national, should that be the region's responsibility? I mean, I understand that we're designating and we're creating affinity for our regions, but if we as regions aren't saying, hey, we really want these, and it's like the conference that's saying, hey, we want these for the regions, I think part of the surprise was just as we go through our budgets, like, wait, what's this line? And this money's been taken out, and why? We didn't ask for this. So part of that, you know, and maybe it's even these columns, maybe it's not region's responsibility, central office responsibility. Maybe there is a different way to look at this in terms of national initiatives, regional initiatives, or something along those lines. So that was about 3 different questions right there. As far as, you know, again, do we need the ribbons or not? Who's asking for the ribbons? Whose responsibility are they in terms of, is this a regional initiative versus a national initiative, and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. Shanna, first of all, I think no, I'll say it the other way. Everyone, please feel free to feel potentially petty, because I think we are at a place where we're having conversations that we used to not have anymore. So I would rather us have open communication and share what's really on our mind rather than swallow. So B, C to whatever, the ribbons piece. So we did have those conversations internally as well. The current process is all groups were charged for their regional things, for the ribbons that affiliated to their group. So for example, the community college division was charged for the regions. The nuance that I'm hearing you say, Shanna, that wasn't the case though, is the community college asked for the ribbons, versus in this case, there potentially is a feeling that the regions were imposed, that you needed to buy these regions, or we just didn't ask in general, and that's maybe a different of a nuance. I will say that I think as I reflect on the conversations over the past year and a half, because a little bit different, but kind of similar. Shanna, feel free to say not similar at all, but is going back to the Bowling Green costs that came up for the travel for the history exhibit. Again, is it a national initiative? Is it a regional initiative? And depending on which initiative it is, whose budget should be accounting for that. So I think we can definitely make note of that here. For the ribbons for NASPA annual conference, it's noted in line 17 right now. So I did account for it there. It's currently under the regional responsibility, but again in December, I think we continue to have this conversation to see, does that make sense or should it be shifting?
Yeah, just one other piece of clarity. I remember for our St. Louis conference, oh my gosh, we talked about ribbons for hours, way too many hours, and ended up, I think, not doing ribbons, and then at the last minute decided to do ribbons. But I recall for the regional, we purchased those. And so that might just be on the sheet a little bit of clarity too, not only whose responsibility is it, but kind of going back to what Candy was saying. I think part of it too was we weren't necessarily placing the order for the national, again, and we do place the order for the regional. So that's a little bit different and a little confusing then.
Yep, we can make that edit, absolutely. Other conferences and events additions or clarifications?
Nathan, this is Terry. One of the questions that had come up Region 3 Joint Conference was around paying, for staffing from the national to attend that conference. And then the question was around what is the role of the staff member there? Can you help clarify that? And I guess the same thing would go for, a staff member at the regional board meetings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for 2-3 was a unique situation this year in that, y'all were local. So the region, and if this wasn't the case, we can go back, but Danny and I were intentional that all of Danny's costs that were related to Danny supporting the region went to the regional budget. So as noted, the hotel, food for Danny during that time. Any other staff costs, so Tanya's food, my food, the rest of the Rev team's food, we paid out of the central office budget. So that should have been the case. But again, if that's not, we can clarify on that. For the staff member that's there, and Danny, maybe we can find the document that we have. So when we meet with the conference chair, one of the documents they receive is kind of staff potential activities at the regional annual conference, your large meetings. And we started probably 5 or 6 years ago, it really was registration support. So it was staff were there to help, make sure the balance dues get taken care of, all of that event. Many regions have kind of tacked onto that over the years. So I will say most regions, if not all now, will have us, either Danny or I, in addition to helping with the registration support, help with the silent auction, evening events, kind of bouncing if needed. Some regions are having us do some presentations as well. So I know I'm helping present a pre-con at 4 West with a few of their other leaders, the first time attendee session. So really how we've raised it to the conference chairs is we are really at the disposal of the region at that point. Because you are paying essentially for us to be there, you can use us however you see fit. So that's kind of the current role. For the advisory board meetings, if I might, Chris or Candy, can I punt to the two of you because you're the ones that have had us out, and benefits, negatives, or kind of what you've used us for?
Sure. This is Candy. I understood from the get-go that it was really up to us, and Nathan and I had some conversation about the benefits of doing that. And so we actually had last summer, not 2019, but 2018, we had Danny come out, and that happened to be a year where the advisory board meeting did coincide with the conference committee meeting at the conference site for us in Region 6. We were hosting that year. And so Danny was able to be there really for almost a whole week in the few days of meetings with the conference committee. We had a half-day overlap with both committees, and Danny did some central office training, this kind of overview of NASPA organizationally and how things work, which was super helpful. And we were just launching the strategic plan, so he and I kind of did some of that together, and then he stayed for the advisory board meeting a few days after that. And I just found it personally, as a new RD, super helpful to have Danny there just to answer questions. And I'm going to speak very frankly. I think that sometimes what I had heard from former RDs, not just in my region, but just in the RD rumblings was, well, you know, are they going to butt in or give their opinion too much? And if I may say in front of you both, because I've now had Danny and Nathan in these meetings, that absolutely does not happen with the two of you. And I appreciate that about you, by the way. And I want Amy to know that too. It's just, you know, Nathan was with us this last summer. It was just advisory board, a few days of advisory board retreat. Nathan was with us. And I just find it very, very supportive. I mean, I see them as a support staff for me, because anytime I had a question about anything related to the national organization and the central office operations, I could just look to my, you know, left or right and say, can you answer that question? And I also, one of the nice things that Nathan did this summer was when things came up that we didn't know the answer to or somebody was asking about, he would do that research or contact somebody back in the office and have the answer right there, as opposed to having to wait, you know, to contact later. And so I found it to be a worthwhile investment of money to have them physically there.
Without being repetitive.
I want to just. Yeah,
go ahead, Terry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, without being repetitive, the other thing that we found very helpful is we used the opportunity to use Nathan we integrated him into our new board member orientation. So he spent a lot of time talking about kind of this theory and science behind member engagement and stuff. And that really framed our planning portions of our meetings very, very well. So it worked. It's first time. I think it's the first time you've ever been to Region 5, probably, right, Nathan and/or Danny? Yeah, and it's something we've already committed to doing next year too, because of exactly what Candy was talking about, and also the opportunity to provide some very right time, appropriately professional development to volunteer members, especially if they're new to this type of role.
Thank you for that. And I want to echo that I have appreciated having you there, Nathan, for the same reasons, right? When we have a question, you're able to quickly get that to us. And one of the things that I'd like to do is to think about how to better incorporate you into our meetings so that you're not seen as, you know, and you're not, but this question, like it did for Candy, came up for me, like, why is Nathan there and what is his role? And, you know, I found you to be helpful. So I'd like to think about how I can better position you in those meetings.
Terry, I will follow up because I was assuming due to budget, you didn't want one of us in Niagara, but if that's not the case, I am free.
Oh, good.
So
good. That would be great.
I got Todd's email, so I'll follow up in a separate email. Danita, I saw you unmuted.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to say 4 East has always had Nathan and Danny us for various meetings and has been very helpful. I mean, that's why 4 East just feels like Nathan and Danny belong to our region because you have been there for a while. Actually, it's been a number of years since the beginning, I think, when you kind of started. I think we adopted you and you adopted us as a region. So you're always very helpful for us and very welcome.
Thank you, Danita. I think the nuance is, and I know this year I didn't bring it up, so that's my fault, because I know you said yes, but I think the summer advisory board meetings, I think, is the shifting for the region. And Shanna, I forgot that, you know, Fargo was just so unforgettable that I forgot that I went there. But Shanna, anything you would add from your lens of having me at your advisory board?
Yeah, we've had the same questions in the past about, is this helpful, is this needed? And I think it's been everything from registration processes, funding, being able to do payments more on the fly has been very helpful for some of the auxiliary events that we've had. And just knowing that we have somebody right there who knows exactly who to call. I mean, we know that we can call NASPA, but sometimes there's a little bit of a routing issue, or maybe somebody might be out, and you guys have those direct lines that if there were ever an issue, you could just, have easy connection. So it's been great to have folks come.
Awesome. I recognize we're at time, so I'm just going to briefly go over the rest of the areas, and then maybe we can move to email. NASPA annual conference, I think pretty self-explanatory. For the events that you're doing, you're responsible for. With the exception of space, we'll clarify the ribbons. And then general administration, and I know this started some of the conversations, and I didn't realize, so the mailing for checks, I found that out at the advisory board meeting at Fort West. I didn't realize that's what we're doing. So again, I think just kind of clarifying the mailing of checks, membership funds. So as Amy noted, that would be one of those formula ones that we couldn't give an actual amount, but we could share the formula there. Conference call system is Ring Central, board effects, the use of Volunteer Central, Intact and Nexonia. So, Amy, to clarify, there are currently charges for additional licenses for Intact and Nexonia, but those are getting paid by the central office, correct? That's what this 26 and 27. I think so.
The Nexonia and Intact?
Yes.
Yeah, we're paying for those.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you for checking. And then staff support. And then the last area, and again, I'll clarify this in the follow-up email that I sent, is the kind of future ideation of if we were able to work through all the politics at the snap of our finger, what other things should the regions be having as regional support? We know many of you are using your own sign-up geniuses. Would it make sense to have a central sign-up genius? We had Trello before, and NASPA is implementing Asana. Would something like a project management team make sense? I know some regions have asked us for an @naspa.org email address. Unfortunately, there's additional cost for that, so we haven't moved forward with that. There's been questions about access to database. Obviously, there are other process questions and other philosophical questions we need to answer first. But that's the access to database, projectors again. So that's just kind of the ideating moving forward, what we would like to do. So again, just as I'm moving forward, we did record the call. I'll send a follow-up email. But if there are other things that aren't located there, feel free to add them. And I'll work with Amy to timeline out kind of when we would want the final list to then give us on staff time to research so that we can have actual numbers for our December board meeting conversation on the 4th, or I think the 4th, on the 4th. Any other follow-up questions, comments, concerns, things before we jump off?
I have one, and I don't know if people want to stay on the call for this or if you just want me to ask you. It's about Experian. We're looking ahead to 2021, and we're having some issues again. I'm not sure what is going on.
Unfortunately, I need to ring off.
And that's fine. I can talk to just you, Nathan, if it's helpful, or you, Nathan.
Shanna, we'd love to know the specifics.
Yeah, I've got an email right in front of me, so anybody is welcome to stay on, but yeah,
okay.
I'd like to talk to at least the NASPA folks about that.
I'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye, Candy.
Bye.
Want me to go ahead? So we, have used Experian for, I think since Wayne was our RD 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, anyway. And so Teresa had filled out or had requested assistance from Experian. And they ended up, this is the first time that I'm aware of, and maybe we've just done it differently in the past, but they sent her a lead sheet. And the lead sheet is super complicated for like this beginning level. I don't recall ever filling that out before. I think that maybe they walked us through it in a phone call, but not this lead sheet that they're sending us. So Teresa replied and said, okay, I'm happy to fill this out, but do you have our lead sheet from other years? You know, in the past, we've done this a little bit differently. And so then they sent her Region 5's lead sheet. And so she replied, and Teresa, our incoming RD, and said, no, this is Portland. And then Experience replied and said, the first time I worked for you was Portland. So there's just this really weird disconnect, and I don't understand so I just replied to them and basically said, we've worked together for years. I know that you have Region 4 West stuff. Mm-hmm. It's so much more helpful if you already have our schedule, you already have a lead sheet, you already know what I want, you already know what we need. Why do we have to fill this all out again? So, yeah, does that make sense?
It does. I wonder, Shanna, if this particular rep isn't differentiating between the regions, but just thinking about the regions as an entity in and of itself, which is not what they necessarily should be doing, but that would explain why. It's not that I think they're mixing up Region 4 West and Region 5. I just think they're thinking about regions. But we do a lead sheet before every event. That is their standard process. We do it for every time we source a new event, we'll fill one out as well. If it's complicated or if there's support we can provide in filling it out, let's talk about that. Again, the whole goal of this is to make the process easier, not harder. So we should talk through that.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things so the lead sheet, and it's not necessarily that we have to fill out a lead sheet. It's just that, our conference is most of the time Monday through Thursday. Monday being kind of when we do our board meetings, Tuesday through Thursday is our schedule. Rooms are pretty much always going to be the same. Numbers are pretty much always going to be the same. Concessions are pretty much always going to be the same. And this is like a lead sheet that's, please fill this out for us.
Yeah.
And
so
it's
Shanna,
like, you've got to have this somewhere.
Yeah. So I worked
and going back and forth. And it's Jennifer Nelson. She's been there.
Oh, yeah, she should know. Yeah. Shanna, could you forward me the most recent reply that you just sent? I've been working with Lauren, and Lauren and I have changed the process a little bit. Chris actually just went through it of having the first call. I don't think it would make sense in this case because, again, y'all have used them for so often. So let me follow up with Lauren because they should have your most recent lead sheet. And if nothing else, what I can do is get your most recent lead sheet that Experian did, combine it with, and fill out everything and just highlight the couple things that I'll need from y'all. But I'll copy over all of the previous stuff. So really I'll just need are the dates that you're wanting and the cities.
Yeah, and again, the kind of working smarter, not harder type thing. Like basically we've said in the past, we are open basically October 15th to November 20th. Those kind of things. Like we haven't necessarily picked dates. We've just shipped it out to the hotel, and then that provides us some options. We know that we'll be in Oklahoma, so we're willing to go anywhere in Oklahoma. Most likely it's going to be Oklahoma City or Tulsa, just because of airports. But yeah, it was odd. So, and it may be how Teresa's communicating versus I think my email was maybe a little more explanatory. I don't know. So I forwarded it to you.
Okay.
And we can see. So.
Yeah, I'll follow up next week, Shanna.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.